All right. Let's get fired up here.
Maximum freedom. Read.
Stay on target.
Maximum freedom.
Stay on target.
Maximum freedom. Read Rothbard.
Good morning, Vietnam! Oh, wait, it's showtime. That's right. It's the actual Anarchy podcast where we talk about movies from a Rothbardian Anarcho-Capitalist perspective. And yes, I know it's November. And yes, I know we just did a series of horror films, but we wanted to slip one more in with our special guest tonight. And we will do that in just a few minutes. Once we say hello to Robert, after I tell you that this is episode 259 of the show, and we're doing Beetlejuice. How you doing, Robert?
Daniel, this movie does not qualify as a horror movie. I'm sorry to break your bubble, but this is only scary for those, I think after about age 7, I think you're going to be okay. But there is some creepy stuff up to age 7.
I'll grant you that. However, I think that if you had to fit this into a genre, it sort of straddles the horror line.
Comedy?
Comedy horror.
Horror. Homedy. It's a homedy. And I think if that hasn't been coined before, we will patent that and sue your ass if you try to say it in any other context. You sons of bitches. I know you're going to do it.
Intellectual property theft. By the way, I'm very ghostly tonight because I'm wearing the green screen, blue screen shirt, so I can be very ethereal, and I think it's going to be appropriate for tonight.
It's a good look for you.
You know, the afterlife.
You're less than here. I like it.
The Tim Burton movie here. But before we introduce our guest, Robert, I just wanted to see if you're now recovered. The last couple of weeks, you've had some illnesses, potential delays.
I've had some. So what was that? What was that word?
Are you tip top?
I'm the top of this top.
Okay,
you know the top. Good. You know, like the Everest. I've like built a ladder on top of Everest, and I'm standing above everybody else that just climbed up like little bitches.
So this is peak Robert. The top.
Pippy peak. Tip top tip.
Okay, all right. Well, that's good to hear.
I'll have to invent a new word. I'm sorry, I don't know what it is yet.
Well, yeah, you've already done one. I mean, you've more than.
I'm only human, Dan.
Your quota is filled for tonight. But so you're at the peak, you're at the top, and it's only appropriate that we introduce our guest, who is a bottom. I don't know. We'll ask him once we get into the last night's portion of the show. Terrible jokes, I know. It's showtime. Everyone, it's Daniel Elwood and Robert Paul Johnson. We are the Last Nighters. You can find us on the Liberty Movement's YouTube channel and also at lastnighters.com. And tonight we're going to be doing Beetlejuice, starring Michael Keaton, Geena Davis, and Alec Baldwin, who is also my co-host tonight, as you will see in just a moment. But we also have an exciting and wonderful guest. It is James Jenneman of the Blackbird Podcast, who was most recently on for The Birdcage, which we slipped into the back end of Pride Month in June, which doesn't seem all that long ago, but he's back again. And his first appearance was about a year ago, and that was for High Rise, which was a really interesting discussion. So if you haven't already seen those, go back, check those. I will put those on the show notes page, which can be found at lastnight.com/202. And welcome back to the show, James. Why don't you just reintroduce yourself and tell people where they can find whatever it is that you do over on Blackbird.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for having me back to talk about one of my other nostalgic favorite movies, Beetlejuice, tonight. Introduce myself, James Jenneman, as you can see on the screen if you're watching, and you can see in the show notes if you're listening. And you can find my stuff at blackbirdpodcast.com. And I think probably by the time this airs. You might be able to find some more stuff at libertycreators.co, which this is the first time I'm ever talking about it. And I'm not going to talk about it too much, but if you are a libertarian leaning business owner, hit me up, libertycreators.co.
James, that is a great introduction. If you wouldn't mind, can you tell us a little bit about each of those projects? What is Blackbird about? And what is Liberty, whatever the name, I just,
It's the very first time I've ever talked about, I might not even said it out loud before. So Blackbird is my podcast, and it is basically just me and my guests talking about how to kind of make it in the crazy era that we're living in. Sometimes it's libertarian oriented. I'm trying not to make it like a libertarian podcast. So interspersed throughout the interviews with people like Tom Woods and Thad Russell. And you guys actually about a year ago did V for Vendetta on, right around the 5th of November. So previous guests. I bring on like entrepreneurs, life coaches. I had one guy who's like a public speaking coach. I've had yoga teachers and spiritualists and homeopaths and things like that. Just a very varied guest list, basically. But by and large, it's about. Go ahead.
I think your tagline was something about navigating the dim age. Is that still?
Oh, yeah. It's not permanent. It's that the dim age kind of became cliche, and then people stopped using it, which makes sense.
I'm behind the times.
Yeah, which is fine. It is all that. It's we have entered into. So the way I see history, I see it kind of cyclical and also like undulating. I don't remember what the name of this is, like a cosine or something like that. The cyclical stuff is too complicated for this show, and I've already drank some whiskey, so I don't want to get too much into it. But the undulating thing is materialistic and spiritualistic, and it just kind of goes up and down. And we have crested the materialistic age of modernism, done the downslope of postmodernism, and now we're entering into the spiritual or magical, as Vin Armani likes to call it,
the
age.
Post-truth.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
So I'm trying to learn how to prosper in that sort of environment. I think I'm getting a pretty good handle on it, which is good. Which brings me into Liberty Creators, which if it's not live by the time this airs, it will be pretty soon. That's going to be a business directory, which I know we've been we've just kind of been inundated with Liberty business directories, but they all kind of suck. So I want to make one that's good. No offense to the other ones out there. It's tough, but I think that I can do a good one. And basically just, people who are creating their own freedom rather than trying to rely on politics or agorism or anything like that. Thank you for putting the little crawler on. That's good.
Yeah, did I get the right one? Yeah,
that's right. libertycreators.com was either taken or like $10,000. I don't remember, but the CO was like, $15. So I figured it was worth splurging on, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I have a CO myself for a couple of my projects, and I come to find out that it is not just short for .com. It is for the country of Colombia.
Yeah. Yep.
But people use it because it's close enough for government work, I guess, or non-governmental work, as it were.
I've also been working with Jason Stapleton. I'm going to be doing web development. So if anybody needs a site design or redesign, hit me up. I'm doing Nick Ashley's from the Individualist podcast right now. So you'll be able to see my work soon enough.
All right, very good. Yeah, I've noticed that you've been getting around and making your way through the country, and also being on a lot of shows and having a lot of really high-profile guests. So in a way, you're kind of blowing up, and that is really impressive. So I would like to give you some accolades there. And
I appreciate it. Yeah, I am kind of a slut, so it's good.
Yeah, well, like I said, you do get around, and if you wouldn't mind,
like your mother.
She's a saint. Leave her out of this. If you wouldn't mind, just give us a quick rundown, and then we'll get into the movie, I swear, of where you have been geographically in the Liberty realm, and what is your elevator pitch for each of them.
Yeah, well, so last month it was just a whirlwind of a month. We went down to Austin, or right outside Austin, to hang out with the Renegade University weekend at Buck Johnson's place. Thad Russell hosted it. Got to hang out with Scott Horton, Jack the Perfume Nationalist, who is not a libertarian, but he's one of the best cultural commentators you'll ever come across. I highly recommend his podcast, The Perfume Nationalist. Hotep Jesus was there, which was kind of cool. I got to kind of chauffeur him around. He was the only one from out of town, and I was his ride to and from the airport each day in his hotel.
Did you meet our buddy Snobby Bobby? He's about 6'5", tall drink of water. He does the
What's
Not
his
for
last
Everyone
name?
podcast.
Do you know his last name?
I don't know if I know it's
Dude,
I
would remember
say
that.
it. He's super tall though, and he's buddies with Buck. I believe he was at one of those events.
What's the name of this podcast?
The Not for Everyone podcast. It's another movie podcast. They do B-rated and lower horror movies, and they mostly spend. He would quibble with me on this. I say half of the time they're just ribbing each other. He and his co-host, with maybe 15 or 20 minutes of actual like movie analysis in it. Anyway,
dude, I'm trying to find a picture of him, but there's nothing on Google image search. So, if I met him, I don't remember, and I'm sure I did if he was there because I kind of made the rounds. Aforementioned sluttiness in full force.
He's a happily married man, James.
It's all right. Man, you know what they say about the gays. So after that, we drove to Dallas where my family lives, and then to Austin, and then back to Dallas, and then back home to Minneapolis. I think we got home on Tuesday or Wednesday, and then Friday morning. So Friday we were going to fly down to Orlando for Tom Woods' 2000th episode, but a couple of weeks before the 2000th episode event, and we were going to go like a late night flight so I could do a day of work. But a few weeks before the event, Tom messages me out of the blue on Facebook. He was like, "Hey, what time is your flight landing in Orlando?" And I told him, "Oh, not till after midnight." And he goes, "Oh, that's a shame because I had a reservation fall through, like someone on my reservation fall through, and I wanted to see if you wanted to have dinner." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, hang on just 1 second." And I changed my flight. Like, so we leave Minneapolis at like 4 a.m. on Friday, get to Florida, take a nap, have several drinks because I'm nervous as fuck. I don't even know who's going to this dinner because it's Tom Woods. I mean, it could be some high flying people like Gene Epstein or something, or just a bunch of nobodies like me. As it turned out, it was a bunch of middling people. It was a lot of fun. It was so Doc Dixon, the magician who did the big show at the 2000th episode, which you should watch. It's probably live by the time this publishes. He did card tricks for us at the table. And so then it was Tom and Jenna, his fiance, and then a guy named Adam and his wife, Jennifer. Adam was on the Tom Woods show. I think it was episode like 947 or something like that. He's a professional poker player who lives in Vegas. If you remember the show topics. So, and they're hilarious. I felt out of place because I'm not quite as outgoing and funny. And, I was the youngest person at the table, which I'm no longer the youngest person at most places I go. But I was, at this thing. So I don't know. It was a ton of fun. We were there for hours and hours and hours. This really fancy restaurant, like the kind of restaurant where, there's a sommelier that comes and brings you a bottle of wine and has you sniff the cork and stuff. So
fancy.
I know it's the fanciest restaurant I've ever been in. I wish I could say it was the best dinner I've ever had because it probably cost Tom over $1,000 for the 5 of us. But it wasn't. I mean, it was a good dinner. Don't get me wrong. But I would say that my brother-in-law in Dallas is a better chef than whoever was the chef at this place. Not to sound biased or anything like that, but it's pretty good.
All right. Very good. Well,
so yeah. Well, wait, hang on. So that's just the beginning.
Okay.
So we get back to the hotel. Tom got us a great like room rate. It was like less than staying at the Best Western or whatever at this like just super nice resort. Pete Q was there. I don't know, you name it, they were there. Except for Dave Smith, whose wife had just had a baby. I got to meet Michael Malice. That was really, really awkward. So he and my boyfriend at the same time said, "Nice to meet you." And so my boyfriend goes, "Jinx." And Malice goes, "Jinx?" And I said, "Yeah, because you said the same thing at the same time." And Malice goes, "Oh, I know what jinx means. It just isn't funny." And so we just kind of stand there and I say, "Well, not everything you say is funny." And he goes, "Yeah, that's true." And then someone else walks up and introduces themselves to break us of this horrible awkwardness. So I'm like, "Okay, well, we're going to go stand over here." And we like walk away and start rubbing elbows with other people. And obviously Malice looked like he felt guilty for just kind of ruining this conversation. And so he comes over later and he goes, "Hey, do you want to see who my secret guest is?" I was like, "Not really. I kind of want it to be a surprise." And he goes, No, you want to see this." And so we got to know who the secret guest was before anybody else, which was kind of cool. The secret guest was, of course, Tom Woods as a dummy. Malice was just, trolling the entire audience by bringing out a puppet Tom Woods. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. And we went to Universal in Florida and stuff like that too, which doesn't really count as stories. So yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, you've been making the rounds, and I had hoped that Malice would have retorted with, "What's your Twitter handle, so I can block you."
Oh God, I can't imagine. It'd be terrible. I search for him every single day just so that I can see what he's tweeted. He's the only person I do that with.
Yeah, he is very good at the very 140 to 280 character retorts, and usually they work on many levels. Levels, Jerry, levels. Anyway, we have levels of this show that we usually do, and it usually involves getting into the movie in the first, 10, 15 minutes, which we are just on the cusp of not making, but we're going to do it. We're going to do it, James, and we're going to do it for you. Everything we do it for you. And
Michael Bolton?
Well, yeah, Michael Bolton, Prince of Thieves. We start with the Google description. And Robert, if you could cue up a Deo for me.
Deo. One day sail. One day only at the Bon Marché.
That's right. Thank you very much, Robert. Yeah, James, I don't know if you are aware, but there was a store called the Bon Marché that was local to the Seattle area, and they had a radio ad, maybe even a television ad, that was the Deo song, but it was changed the lyrics to "One Day Only Sale" to the Bon Marché. So that's what we think of.
I had no idea what was happening just then. By the way, it's Bryan Adams that did everything I do, not Michael Bolton.
That's right. Yeah. It was a good name until that.
We strive for accuracy on this podcast.
That's right. I don't want to get any fucking fact checkers coming after us on this one. That was only partially true. It is an asshat from the 80s singing about. Anyway, never mind. Till that loser started winning Grammys. Okay, Google description. Here we go. How we start off. Beetlejuice, PG, came out in 1988. It's comedy / fantasy film. However, I called it a horror / comedy film earlier. An hour and 32 minutes, 7.5 out of 10 on IMDb, 85% Rotten Tomatoes, 4 out of 5 on Common Sense Media, and 83% of Google users like it. The description reads, after Barbara, played by Geena Davis, and Adam Maitland, played by a killer, Alec Baldwin, die in a car accident, they find themselves stuck haunting their country residence and unable to leave the house. When the unbearable Dietzes, played by Catherine O'Hara and Jeffrey Jones, of course, of the principal of Ferris Bueller's Day Off Variety, and teen daughter Lydia, played by Winona Ryder, buy the home. Maitland's attempt to scare them away without success. Their efforts attract Beetlejuice, played by Michael Keaton, a rambunctious spirit whose help quickly becomes dangerous for the Maitlands and innocent Lydia. Came out March 30, 1988, directed by Tim Burton with a musical score by Danny Elfman, and it had a box office of $73.8 million against a budget of $15 million. And Robert, we'll go to you. It's showtime.
Yeah. So this is the first time I was ever exposed to Tim Burton, the first time he ever exposed himself to me. I enjoyed it a great deal at the time. I would definitely call this, I think the Google description is more accurate at comedy fantasy. There are some scary-ish elements for the younger set. Maybe if you are delicate of sensibilities, you may be akin to saying that this is some sort of a horror film. But like I've said a million times before, having grown up on Hellraiser and shit like that, and Poltergeist, this is like the cute comedy horror movie, if you're going to call it that. Like if the Powerpuff Girls made a horror movie or something like that. It's not what you would call a traditionally scary thing. Like even the Beetlejuice character, he's funny. He's not particularly scary. Now he's supposed to scare the humans, but the audience is in on the joke, I think, the most of the time. Maybe a kid who's not quite following what's happening maybe would think Beetlejuice is a scary character, but I don't know. I just find it very entertaining. The whole movie is a lot of fun. Now, for a movie called Beetlejuice, he's really not in it that much, and he does steal every scene he's in. Michael Keaton is a fantastic actor. In fact, all the acting is really, really good across the board. I even enjoyed Dick Cavett making a little cameo appearance as the mom's agent. That was fun. But yeah, he's not a terrifying antagonist or anything like that. It's not even necessarily that he's like it's really more about Geena Davis and Alec Baldwin, and they're trying to get along more with Lydia and her family. And then they're just like, well, should we use Beetlejuice to help out with this? Yeah, because we're desperate. No, we shouldn't. Yes, we should. That kind of thing. And then, of course, it's like the making a deal with the devil. It's we're not even sure exactly what a Beetlejuice that isn't dead anymore would even do. That I think kind of makes the film suffer a little bit. We're not really clued in on why him marrying Lydia is a really, really bad idea. I mean, other than obviously she would get married to this terrible person, but
she's a child.
She's a child. I mean, yeah, but we're not. It's not made clear that Beetlejuice is going to become this undead human monster creature that's going to wreak havoc on the world or something. It's a much smaller, more intimate story, and we're left to kind of just assume that things would be bad and that this is something we don't want. Ultimately, I think you're just like, well, she shouldn't agree to marry this guy, and this isn't a legitimate wedding, and that kind of thing. But anyway, it's a whole lot of fun. I don't know. Everything's tongue in cheek, except for maybe the scene where they're raising the dead, and they're like in their wedding outfits. That scene's kind of like sad and kind of scary a little bit, but I don't know. Everything else is just played up for laughs for the most part, and I had a great time with it.
Okay. Well, that's an interesting take. I remember this movie watching it in childhood and like enjoying it, and Beetlejuice is in it far less than I remembered. You know, like Michael Keaton steals the show in every scene. And recollecting it, you remember the movie, but you don't remember what it's about. At least I didn't. Like, I remembered specific scenes and things that had happened, but the overall, what's the point of this movie, the story arc, I didn't recall at all. And watching it again recently, I got to say, I still don't really understand what the point is, other than just to have Tim Burton do some Tim Burton-y stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, we don't know what the danger is should Beetlejuice get reanimated or whatever, and be released. Like that, we don't know what the risk is. We don't know what the stakes are. We're never given like what is the danger. We just know that the lady who is their caseworker said, "Oh, don't let that guy out. He used to work for me, and he's off the handle. He's crazy or whatever." But we don't like get anything much beyond that. And really, it is just the family, the Maitlands, they die, and this new family moves in and changes everything, and they don't like that, and so they try to scare them away, and they're not scared. And I mean, that's kind of the story. So, as far as like, what's the point? I don't really, other than just, having fun, kind of lacked a little bit for me. But James, let's go over to you. What's your...
You libertarians are just way overthinking this shit. It's
yeah,
it's
you've
not
seen this
facts
movie
and
like
logic.
a thousand times.
So yeah, it's definitely comedy. This is not a horror movie or a fantasy movie. If you go to a video store from the 1990s, it was in the comedy section. And it came out, I was 5. I might not have seen it until I was 6. I know I didn't see it in the theater. We didn't really go to movies back then. So I saw it on VHS. Almost certainly in 88 or 89. I was very little. I've never been scared of this movie. Like when her hand dries up at the end, when she's in her wedding dress, that was a little bit uncomfortable for me. But that was more just because like it was no longer funny and I didn't quite understand like why. I think one point to make. So I actually just noticed this today, and Daniel, I messaged you about it because it was kind of a breakthrough. Otho at the end, or during the dinner party scene, or maybe right after, he says, "You know what happens to people who commit suicide in the afterlife? They become civil servants." And if you look, like the girl behind the counter at the like in the lobby, she says, "If I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have had my little accident," and shows her slit wrists. Mm-hmm. And Juno, the caseworker, has a slit throat, and it's it's possible that she slit her own throat. I don't know. So it could just be that all these people committed suicide, including Beetlejuice, and became like the government bureaucrats. And Beetlejuice had a libertarian conversion experience and went off on his own. He's an entrepreneur, and there's nothing a government social worker like Juno hates more than an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. She wants to regulate his business out of existence, or at least tax it. So that's kind of where I see it now, after having watched it for the 1001 first time today, is that Beetlejuice is the libertarian character, and that's why the government bureaucrats hate him so much. That said, he's a bit of a renegade. And so in the end, he gets eaten by a sandworm, which is, sorry, spoiler alert, he gets eaten by a sandworm, which might be his just desserts. Or at least the sandworm's dessert.
Sandworm from Saturn.
Right, yeah.
Not Dune.
Well, that's not. I don't think that's explicitly said in the. I don't think that's explicitly said in the movie, but it is.
It's said in the movie that you've been to Saturn. I've been to Saturn. Sandworms, right? I hate them too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's a line that Beetlejuice says.
That is
when
weird.
He first meets him. He's like, "You've been to Saturn, right? We got all kinds of things in common. Look, I dress just like you." And then he puts on the suit.
Yeah.
We shop at the Shea store.
Yeah.
Give me a
that scene was always hilarious
James.
too. Yeah, no, Beetlejuice is great. Sure, he wants to marry an underage girl, but he's libertarian. Who doesn't? So that's my POV on it now. I've always thought it was a funny movie. I've always really enjoyed it. I've never overthought it. It just being an excuse for Tim Burton to do Tim Burton-y things. One other thing, it's a very good cultural commentary on like sort of the yuppie community. They didn't really use the word community like that back then, but on yuppieism. Why did those people want to come in and change up this really nice old house and turn it into this like monstrosity of 80s modernism? It's terrible. Catherine O'Hara, is that who plays her? The mom?
Yeah.
Delia, her art is awful. And like everybody knows it except for her. She does make a pretty fantastic bust of Beetlejuice at the end, but
my aunt's like her. She's an artist.
Loosely defined.
Yeah. I don't know. It's all right.
Otho's character is insufferable and I love him to death. That actor's character in Demolition Man is my favorite character in that entire movie.
He is in Demolition Man. Yeah.
Did you know that guy, he became crippled somehow and he was in a wheelchair and he fell out of his wheelchair and hit his head on the floor, and that's how he died.
Oh.
Wow.
I know. Isn't that awful? Anyway, yeah. Did you guys do Demolition Man recently? Or
we did it about a year ago.
Not recently, but yeah.
Okay.
With Snobby Bobby, the guy we were telling you about.
Oh, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I just watched that a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't realize that Otho's actor was in it. But in keeping with my favorite character always being like the brains behind the power, like Leo from The West Wing, and Tyrion and Varys from Game of Thrones, like just always sort of the second in command, the guy that's advising the person who's really in power. Mm-hmm. That's who Otho's character in Demolition Man was too. And really, it's kind of his character in Beetlejuice when you think about it. He's the interior designer who also knows everything about the afterlife somehow. He's like the brainiac. He's one of my favorite characters in this movie too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I also
I thought Otho was fantastic.
yeah, he's one of the standouts. I mean, it's hard to compare to Michael Keaton's performance
Oh, sure.
standout, but yeah, I think Otho is the other one that kind of stands out. It's weird because in recollecting this, I remember Geena Davis, and I remember the principal from Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Mm-hmm.
But for the life of me, I didn't even recall that Alec Baldwin was in this movie, and he is the main character. He's the hero.
Yeah. Well, he looks so different when he was young.
Yeah. Yeah, I did not remember Alec Baldwin either, honestly. I remember Geena Davis a little bit. I remember mostly just Lydia and Beetlejuice. Everybody else kind of off to the side.
And of course, they're the main characters in the cartoon show that aired somehow.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing that cartoon a couple times.
Yeah, it wasn't very good, if I
Yeah.
recall. I don't remember watching very much of it.
Oh man, I was in maybe 3rd or 4th grade, so it was right up my alley.
Now this was Michael Keaton pre-Batman, so this was
Yeah, you're right.
like sort of before he became kind of a big deal. Like he'd been in a couple of movies prior to that. I'm not like a big Michael Keaton historian here, but I know he's in like Clean and Sober, and there was some used car movie he was in. Then there was this, and then this is Tim Burton, and so is Batman.
Mhm.
And he's still active to this day. He did Founder a couple of years ago, which was a great movie. We did
Yeah.
that a while back.
He did
And,
Birdman. He's done all kinds of stuff.
Birdman. And he's
Birdman was
also
really good.
currently on Hulu. There's a series called Dope Sick that he's in, and that's another thing that my wife and I have started watching, and it's really good. And it's about the opiate epidemic in rural America, where like these people who work very strenuous and injury-prone jobs like coal mining and logging and things like that are suffering from injuries and pain, and so they were targeted with this new drug that was supposedly non-addictive, which of course the evil pharmaceutical company was lying about. And that's what led to all those addiction problems and the opioid epidemic as we know it. And it's kind of interesting to me that this Dope Sick series is actually highly rated, and people talk about it a lot. And it presents pharmaceutical companies in sort of the evil light in which they were seen for generations
Pre-COVID.
prior to like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And so it's just like kind of crazy that it's a current series that people are talking about, and somehow they're disconnected from feeling that same way about pharmaceutical companies in real life anymore, even though this is like depicting what happened 10 or 15 years ago with many of those same types of companies. So it's just a kind of a crazy thing, but he's in it and he's good. So anyway, that's my side rant into Dope Sick about pharmaceutical companies being evil, based on Michael Keaton being in both.
Yeah, because you can't have a libertarian podcast without talking about how evil the pharmaceutical companies are in 2021.
Right. Ellis, and one more thing that I made a point to my wife is if they had called the present medical procedure that they want to impose on everybody anything other than a vaccine, people would be far more resistant to them if they called it like a drug or a pharmaceutical or something like that, because people are far more critical of pharmaceutical companies and drugs, and drugs are bad, MK, but because they use the magic V word, and there's been decades of promotion of the V word, and anyone who questions the V word are labeled certain things, they're using the cachet that has been built up over those generations with the V word and applying it to this product, which barely qualifies as such, so that they get more buy-in from people, because they've been conditioned to accept that as a necessary and beneficial thing, as opposed to your traditional, expensive, dangerous prescription drug kind of thing. And
with
rants.
side effects and pumping up the cost of it and everything, all the things they get.
Right. Yeah.
up
Any
for.
other pharmaceutical you see an ad for on TV, they list a whole bunch of fast speech legalese about all these potential side effects. And then 5-10 years later, if you were taking this in this period and that period, you may be entitled to compensation. Those are the types of things that people are familiar with and have hesitancy, like a legitimate hesitancy about. And now when they say the term hesitant, they imply that you will eventually not be hesitant and that you will eventually decide to do this thing. Whereas rather than give you agency in how they describe it, whereas if you are informed and have read up on these things and you have made a solid decision, you are not hesitant. You have made a choice. You've made a positive, affirmative choice in the negative, to not take a certain drug. Anyway, Beetlejuice.
Yes.
Beetlejuice.
Yes.
Beetlejuice.
You love the way they play with language, for sure.
Yeah, that's a great little aside.
Side rant. Anyway, take us back to the movie, James.
What do you guys think of the sets? I mean, I guess that's one of the things that really stands out to me is just sort of the setting and sets of the movie. I mean, their house is cool. It's a quaint old, New England farmhouse, basically. But then they're taken into the afterlife bureaucratic office with the weird lighting and I mean, just the guy that's hanging, that's got the tire tracks on him, who's all flat.
Mm-hmm.
Who kind of is their guide, but also not really a guide because he's just on a string. And then that weird hallway with the janitor. I don't know. I just love the way the movie looks and feels. Even the terrible things that Delia Dietz does to their house still looks kind of cool. The way that it's lit and, I mean, 80s aesthetic is kind of making a resurgence right now anyway. So
yeah,
no,
I mean,
the movie looks.
Go ahead. Rob.
Go ahead. Okay, well, the movie looks great. You are right, James. The only thing that doesn't hold up is the Saturn set. The way that they green screen them against the sand and the miniatures and whatnot. The stop motion on the worms. Obviously, I think they probably took this and went with The Nightmare Before Christmas for the stop motion animation.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't work as well when you're pairing it against live action. Now, I think it still looked pretty good. I think it looked pretty good when it was eating Beetlejuice, when it comes crashing through the floor, the ceiling there. But when they're on Saturn itself, I don't think it looks too good. But other than that, the sets, yeah, they're fantastic. The house has a ton of personality, whether you think it's horrifying or charming, but it's like that 80s modernism, and if it's nothing if not distinctive. And then you've got the fashions of the day were all, everything has so much character. And then the undead waiting room and all the dead characters, they all have tons of personality, and I love that. I love that you remember each one of these characters. I remember the head shrinker guy. He doesn't have a line, but he looks great. And you remember when he shrinks Beetlejuice's head
with his magic dust. I think another thing that was hilarious was when, the dad principal from Ferris Bueller, he bought this house because he kind of went insane in the city and he needed to relax. And so when Delia and Otho are going through the house and spray painting the walls and picking the curtains and all this stuff, he says, "Why don't you just not touch this room?" Referring to his little study where he watches the birds and stuff. And he makes a big deal out of how that's the room where he relaxes. And then maybe 5 minutes later, Lydia comes in and he tells her, "Leave me alone. I found a way to make money while I relax," which is so me and so the person of that type. I don't know if it's type A or type B or what, but it's just so funny to me that the way that he goes and relaxes is by finding ways to monetize his new hobbies.
Now, what specifically were you talking about related to that? He was looking at the town and he was like, "Oh, that's a nice building there and a nice parking lot, so I'm going to turn it into something." But this was before he knew about the ghosts, right?
I don't remember. It was so he was talking to his business partner, whoever it is, Maddie Dean. Was that something Dean?
Yeah, Robert Goulet.
Thanks. I don't know any of the actors. God, I don't remember what it was that he found out he could monetize. I just remember that line, talking about how much he's going to relax and then saying he figured out a way to make money while he does it. Just because, I mean, that's what burnt him out and made him move out to the country, which is kind of what I'm looking to do too. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe I'll reverse haunt some dead couple's house or something.
Okay, yeah.
Which, by the way, I mean that's the point of the movie. I mean, like Beetlejuice markets himself as a bio-exorcist. He's like the reverse exorcist. He gets the living out of the dead people's home by scaring the shit out of them.
Yeah, I like how they said that at least nobody's gotten hurt yet, but they did drop the dad like down flight of stairs.
Yeah, I thought that was hilarious.
I would think that would cause some kind of injury, but what do I know? But is it the case that Beetlejuice was not able to actually like harm them? It was only he was able to scare them because he was physically interacting with them. He was grabbing them and moving them around.
I mean, there's probably a couple of plot incontinuities in the movie. Where did you get that he wasn't able to harm them? Was that like a rule?
Well, like maybe that was just his agreement with Maitland's, was that he was just going to scare them away. So that could be what it was. Yeah. But I wasn't sure what the internal logic was. They don't really explain it. But when they have to say his name 3 times, like Candyman, to get him to come out. Then if they say his name 3 times again, he has to go back. And is that just in size, or is it into like another? I mean, they can still interact with him. He's just much smaller before they say his name 3 times.
I don't know. Like, does he live in that model? And if so, where did he live before the model was built? Or he doesn't live. He's a ghost, so maybe he doesn't live anywhere.
He just hangs out wherever he wants.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he used to work.
Right. So like, yeah, when there's no model, what does saying his name 3 times do? Huh. I don't know. Why are we overthinking this? Is a fucking
I know. It's a silly, movie. Fun movie. You either enjoy it or you don't.
Danny Elfman's music, huh? You like that?
Yeah, strong. It fits in this movie. It fits with Tim Burton.
Yeah,
it's definitely Danny Elfman at his Danny Elfmanist. Pee-wee's Big Adventure might be even more Danny Elfman than this, but
and the at least Batman.
Yeah, true. That's a lot of Prince too. I think Pee-wee's Big Adventure and Beetlejuice. Well, other than Deo, I think he probably did the entire score. Right?
Probably.
Yeah, there were a lot of those like songs about Venezuela and Señoras and all that in this, and it didn't seem to fit, but it was enough of a thing to like be a theme, but it was like incongruous with the movie.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the point, to have some kind of a contrast. Like this type of music doesn't fit with this at all, but we're fitting it in there, and so it's going to stand out.
Was that Calypso Latin stuff? Was that popular back then? I mean, you're probably too young to really know what the pop culture was like back then too. But like, I'm thinking Gloria Estefan. I mean, that was kind of the height of her career too.
The Rhythm's going to get you,
and Menudo and stuff. I don't know. Maybe that was just like the hit music at the time.
There's no way Deo was a hit song at the time.
No? Okay. I have no idea. I don't even know when that song came out.
Is it called the Banana Boat song? It's like way older, isn't it?
Is it?
When did the Banana Boat song get released? It had to be in like in the 40s or something. The 30s or the 20s.
Traditional Jamaican folk song. So it's not even like, I guess 1956 was when Harry Belafonte. Oh, all right. So that's who did it. The very first time was in 1952 by a Trinidadian singer.
Okay.
So there we go. Yeah, 50s. God, I didn't realize I was that old.
Well, here is a question. What was Beetlejuice before he died? So in BeetlejuiceFandom.com, they say, what is known for certain, per Juno's warning to the Maitlands, is that Beetlejuice was once Juno's assistant, which implies that he committed suicide in life. Working for her counts as being a civil servant. The explanation of his suicide by hanging was left out of the film, but he was a troublemaker. I was hoping that there would be something about like he was into calypso music or lived on an island or something like that. That would have been justification for those types of songs to be in this.
So they're confirming on the fandom site the civil servant thing that Otho said that I didn't realize until I was 38 and watching it for the 1000th and first time. I can't believe I had never caught that until today. That's insane. That is so funny to me. that the entirety of the ghost population in this movie, other than the Maitlands and the people in the lobby, were all suicides who then became government bureaucrats. Which is, civil servant is a fucking euphemism for that. Sorry, am I allowed to drop the F-bomb? Did I just
what is the government of the dead? I don't know.
It's the purgatory. They were the ones funneling the newly dead and acclimating them to their new environs and helping them get to where they needed to be. So yeah, it makes sense that they would be, the government is the purgatory. So those are the people who have killed themselves, and they're helping all the newly dead. And when Beetlejuice, he gets that number near the end, it's like 9 trillion or 90 trillion. I don't know, whatever the national debt's about to be. And he switches it with the witch doctor guy for the number 4. He goes, oh, looks like I'm next.
Yeah. But why was he there even? Oh, because he was like re-dead by the sandworm, maybe.
Right, yeah. So when they got him out of the model, Beetlejuice, to get him to get married, then the sandworm ate him. So he must have been like reanimated or re-alive at that point. And so then thus able to die again. And no longer as a civil servant.
You can get eaten by sandworms on Saturn, even if you're dead. Otherwise, why is there any kind of a threat to the couple when they go to Saturn?
Yeah, true.
Maybe that was just a perceived threat, because by the end, Geena Davis is able to corral one of them and ride it like a
horse,
like Paul Atreides.
Like Paul Atreides, yeah, he's riding the sandworm, Dune style, to eat the Beetlejuice.
Oh yeah, no spoilers on Dune. I'm going to see that this weekend.
Oh, we're talking about the old David Lynch one.
Okay, I haven't seen that.
That's 1984. Yeah.
Yeah, we are.
And Paul Atreides doesn't ride a sandworm in the new one.
Oh, see, now you just ruined it for James here.
That's all right. It's okay.
He doesn't. That doesn't tell you anything about the movie.
James wanted to see him ride a sandworm.
My partner is so sensitive to spoilers that I read on IMDb. We're watching The Haunting of Bly Manor right now on Netflix. We're kind of behind on that series, and I read just the cast list on IMDb, which had a very minor spoiler. Like, it was basically like one of the kids, you see them again when they're old in the later episodes of the season. And like, I was about to let that loose, and he was like, no, don't tell me. Like, he doesn't want to know anything, including that whatever that person's name was doesn't ride a sandworm in the new version.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. You just don't want to. I can understand that. I can sympathize.
We are gonna do that movie at some point, the new Dune. I haven't seen it yet, but we did the David Lynch one a couple of years ago with our buddy Luke Tatum. And once he gets settled in, he's moving right now. Once he gets settled in, we're going to do the new one with him. So that'll probably be in a couple of weeks.
Okay. Well, I've got a little bit of juice for that movie, having seen it once so far.
Okay. All right. And I must add, James, you make podcasts, sometimes shit happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
Things get fucked up. See, I'm dropping F-bombs here.
Mm-hmm.
When we recorded that Dune episode a couple of years ago, apparently I didn't record anything I said. I recorded Luke and I recorded Robert. And so I had to painstakingly listen to them, recreate what I thought I had said, and merge it together. And it took me like 6 hours to do that. So that was a huge mistake on my part. So if you are a podcast maker or creator, make sure that you're recording everything before you do the deed. And also, if you need help with anything, go to libertycreators.co.
Oh God, I really hope. When is this gonna go live?
This
hope
is
it's
gonna
up
go
by
live
then.
on Sunday, but
Oh, it won't be ready by then. But I mean, maybe I'll put up like a join my mailing list thing so that people can sign up and be alerted when it's live. Because I want to have like the best business directory there is, including service providers like Top Lobsa, who's a great artist and everyone should use him for their artwork, to the exterminator in your hometown who you want to hire him because he cares about the same values as you, versus the Terminex man who doesn't care. Hey, so the fandom site says that Beetlejuice attended Juilliard, and is also a graduate of Harvard Business School. Juilliard would make sense. I mean, if he choreographed that dining room scene. Well, I know he didn't do that. That was the Maitlands. How did they know how to do that?
yeah, that was just the power of belief.
Yeah. We don't know. We're not told. Maybe it's in the handbook.
Okay. Maybe it's okay. Yeah, that's true. So in addition to attending Juilliard and Harvard, he also lived through the Black Plague, which is a little bit anachronistic. And he's seen The Exorcist about 167 times, and it keeps getting funnier every single time he's seen it. I guess seeing The Exorcist, though, you don't have to be dead for that, or alive, or anything, or not possessed.
So he's been around a while.
Yeah.
So he's one of those people like in Dr. Sleep where they live for hundreds of years.
It's possible.
So they can get really good at something.
Mm-hmm.
Like Bill Murray
They
style
should
in
have.
Day. Yeah.
Yes, they should have.
Did y'all do Dr. Sleep with my friend, the professional asshole?
We did.
Man,
we did.
I love that
no,
dude. I haven't
it's not
talked to him
true. We did. We did not actually. We did it with Alec Jones.
Oh yes.
Did he come as Alex Jones?
No,
Alex
Alec
Jones is
Alec Jones,
significantly more based twin brother.
More based brother.
Oh
fake,
my God.
Fake brother. Yeah, it's a fun episode. You should check that one out.
Yeah, I'll make sure to do that. I listen to you guys sporadically. No offense, but your episodes are too long, and I'm just not enough of a movie guy to enjoy them too much. I'm gonna message him right now.
How dare you? I'm so offended.
No, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. We built this show around movies so that people can kind of come and go, pick and choose on whether they've seen a movie or not. So that way we have, long-term viability, or what do you call it? Evergreen content.
Yeah.
Good. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And you don't do like current movies, which I think is great. I think that, I love having come on and done 3 of my favorite movies, one of which I still apologize for. I'm really sorry I made you guys sit through High Rise. But it's a ton of fun to just come on and kind of talk about this shit. But I'm not enough of a movie person to be able to speak intelligently to them. Like the fact I keep bringing it up, but that one throwaway line from Otho that gives away the entire like netherworld bureaucracy is so funny. Like I love that so much, that people who commit suicide become bureaucrats.
Yeah, that ties the whole universe together. That's the linchpin. That is the skeleton key.
And that's so 80s too. I mean, today, like, if you're a bureaucrat, you're Dr. Fauci, for crying out loud. I mean, you're the nation's top infectious disease expert. Have you noticed they've stopped calling Fauci the nation's top infectious disease expert, by the way? That used to be like appended to his name every time it was written. It was Dr. Anthony Fauci, comma, the nation's top infectious disease expert, comma, says blah, 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 blah. That has fallen by the wayside in the last few months. Do you think that more and more people are becoming red pilled on COVID?
I think so.
I hope so.
These recent elections in Virginia, and I mean even New Jersey. I mean, the terrible governor of New Jersey won his re-election, but I mean by a hair's breadth. And I mean he beat. Biden won New Jersey by like 16% or something crazy like that. So, I think that. I mean, not to carry water for the Republicans, but I'm actually becoming kind of sour on the LP, by the way, and I'm only telling you that because I've had a glass of whiskey and my lips have become loosened. I sit on my state LP's board, and I love the guys and some of the women who are in the LP, but and I'm seeing it more and more as like a waste of time. Really politics in general. It's not like I'm joining the Republicans, but
welcome to the club, brother.
Yeah, thanks, dude.
We've thought that for a long time.
I appreciate it. I've been reading this book that Curtis Yarvin, you know Curtis Yarvin, Mencius Moldbug.
Yeah.
He recommended. Wait, what?
Not personally.
Oh, I think you said you've met him personally. I was like, oh
No,
man,
no,
lucky. No, so I read him pretty religiously, which I try not to latch on to people too much, but he recommended this book called, I think it's called Imesville, but it's spelled like Yumzaville. And it's about this guy who calls himself an anarch. It's not an anarchist. It's like the opposite of an anarchist. Because anarchists position themselves in opposition to the state and to the ruling class, broadly speaking. Whereas an anarch is just someone who lives without rulers. It's what an anarchist thinks that they are. But in reality, the anarchist, by putting themselves in opposition to the rulers, recognize that they are ruled. Whereas an anarch recognizes that he rules himself and he lives a much freer life because of it. So this guy, like, he's a chief, he's like a steward for the dictator of this city state that he lives in the dystopian future where, everything is back to the ages of city states with, either republics, tribunals, or monarchs. And he has no qualms about working for this guy because he has no philosophy to say, oh, you need to not work for the government, because if you work for the government, you're aiding and abetting the tyrant. No, I mean, the tyrant exists and I'm going to capitalize on that. So he's got himself in the halls of power. He's not like an advisor to the guy, and has obviously no aspirations to fill his shoes, but he's got a really good job, and he gets to listen in on a lot of the conversations in the halls of power. Why am I talking about this? I don't even remember.
Beetlejuice.
Yeah. Anyway, it's such a good book. I recommend it to everybody. It's kind of a hard read. I've been working on it for over a month, and I'm only about a little over halfway done.
Okay.
But it's fun.
We'll put a link to that down there. If you send me the name of that, I'll try to
maybe
find
I will.
Yeah.
I'm going to probably do a podcast episode on it.
Okay.
So
Very
maybe
good.
we'll just, since all of your audience members are subscribed to Blackbird, they'll hear about it soon enough.
They better be. They better be. They can go to blackbird.substack.com. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, that'll work. It's actually blackbirdpodcast.com, but it redirects. So same thing.
Okay. All right. Perfect. All right. And yes, I do like Yarvin's take on a lot of ways, but I also have some qualms with it. Some of it might be because I don't understand it, but others of it is he can justify a lot of things that can be turned for evil.
Yeah.
Which I have issue with. And also, I don't agree with him on his perception of the medical interventions that are being mandated and accepted by many. He seems to be on the wrong side of that for me.
That's kind of part of the anarch thing. You can do what the hell you want, but you don't have to like actively oppose it. Just do what you want instead, because when you actively oppose it, you put a target on your back.
Yeah, I could see that. You're making your life harder.
Yeah,
rather than going with the flow of things to your advantage. But I also have some issues with that as well. But we should actually get back to the movie and start to wind this one down, because we are getting over time. And you are right. We are usually a pretty long episode. We are almost an hour into this. So,
cool. Great.
Do either of you have any final notes before getting into final summary review? And how many Beetlejuices out of 10 will we give this one? Or Deos? We knew Deos.
I have no further notes, Daniel.
I don't have any further notes either. I don't think. I hope that anybody who hasn't seen Beetlejuice in the last few years will rewatch it, having listened to this episode. It's such it like literally, it's probably my favorite movie if I had to pick one. I love this movie.
Okay, why don't you give us your final summary and then how many Deos you're going to give it? It sounds like a lot of Deos.
Yeah, no, I mean, I give it all the Deos out of Deos. 365 Deos. Final summary, I don't even know what that means. It's a great movie. And go see it. or watch it. I think it might be an anniversary year for them or something like that. So if you can see it in a theater, totally do that. Fathomevents.com always has those things. They also have the riff tracks which we were talking about in the pre-show. Yet another website for people to go to.
That's right. And go to our Patreon and you can get that pre-show. So lastnerds.com/Patreon. And you can hear us riffing and raffing for about 35, 40 minutes. And we'll do a little bit of Kathleen Turner Overdrive after we're done with the episode here. So go to
That's always the best part.
Patreon for that. And you can find the show notes and more at lastnight.com/202 for this episode, where James gave Beetlejuice all the Deos that are available, 365 and 1/4 Deos, or 10 out of 10 if we're scoring on a scale of 10. And Robert, so he's considering this a perfect film. Let's get your take and number of Deos out of 10 or 365 and a quarter, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I can't. As much as I like the film, I can't give it a perfect score. But is it worth watching in 2021? Absolutely. For me, a comedy has to be funny, and this movie is still funny. Oh, look, an indoor outhouse. I mean, come on.
Oh my God, that is so funny. I forgot about that.
Yeah, there's all kinds of good little lines in this film, and none of it feels dated. None of it feels like it was like contemporary, like, oh, that joke works because of the politics at the time or something, something, something. They're not referencing anything else. It's all internal, incoherent to the plot and the story. The humor is all character-based, which is so much fun. It's got great acting. I have a little bit of quibbles with the story. I wish it was a little bit different. I wish the villain of Beetlejuice was played up, like we understood why he was going to be a bad thing to bring into the world more. But I can't really fault it for what the movie tries to do. What it tries to do is tell this tiny little story, and I think it succeeds. I'd rather, like I've said many times on the show, I'd rather have a simple story told in an interesting way than a complex story told poorly or even mediocrely. This is a simple story about some people who are unhappy with their new tenants, essentially, and they're trying to get rid of them. And do they make a deal with the devil to get rid of them? They get desperate, and they do. And then there's a climax at the end. And even if I don't understand the stakes, I'm still along for the ride, and it was a lot of fun. It's still worthwhile in 2021. Everybody should see it. If they're a Burton fan, you have to. I don't know why you wouldn't have already seen this movie. But even if you're just an enjoyer of comedies, just in general, just funny things, I've watched this. So I'd give this, for a comedy from the 80s, I can only give it an 8, but 8 for me is like really good. So I'll give it 8 Deos out of 10.
8 Deos. All right. Very good.
8 one-day sales at the Bon Marché.
8 one-day sales at the Bon Marché, one day only, or 8 days only.
Yeah. 8
days a week.
8 days only. 8 back-to-back days of one-day only sales.
All right. Well, my final summary in review is that this movie is better in my head, remembering it from when I watched it as a kid and just remembering specific scenes and characters and moments. And then when you watch it again and try to make sense of the plot, it really kind of loses itself a little bit. There's a bit of muddiness. There's a little bit of a lack of awareness of what the risk or danger is. And so it lacks a little bit there, but it's still very fun. And Michael Keaton is, of course, great in this. And Alec Baldwin, pretty forgettable. Geena Davis stands out. Jeffrey, whatever his name is, who was in the Ferris Bueller, he's basically the same in every movie that he's ever in. Yeah, it's a fun movie. So I'm glad that we got to do this. And James, thank you for coming on and suggesting this one. And I'm going to give this 6.5 Deos. So not like the best score, but not a terrible score. Still recommended.
I will say that I have said every time I'm on your show that I am the libertarian Larry King, and I will give any movie pretty much the maximum number of stars. But I'm serious about Beetlejuice. This is probably my favorite movie.
And rewatchable. I think it doesn't lose anything upon rewatching.
So you would watch
The
this
story
again?
is the story. There's not a lot of drama to it, like we talked about. Since you don't know the stakes, there's not a whole lot of tension, but it's just a good time. So I'd put this on in the background and I'd check it out every couple of minutes. And
That's
play
literally
out
what I
favorite
did today.
scenes and
Yeah, I and it didn't feel like a chore. Like usually I'm watching short form videos and stuff like that while I work. And today I was like, I guess I should probably watch Beetlejuice since I'm going to be talking about it tonight. I just watched it about a month and a half ago, but I did get something out of it from rewatching it today and only paying half attention to it. So yeah, definitely worth rewatching. And let's get out of here.
All right, very good. Well, James, people can find your work at blackbirdpodcast.com, also at blackbird.substack.com. And
that's the same site. Blackbirdpodcast.com is what I pump. So, and then
two ways to get there.
Yeah, at James LJ on Twitter. Don't forget that. I need all the followers.
Okay. And then the new project, which may or may not be up by the time this episode comes out, is libertycreators.co. So we will direct people all those ways, and people can find the show notes and more for this one at lastnighter.com/202, as we were saying before. And this has been Beetlejuice with James Jenneman of the Blackbird Podcast. And Robert, next week, I had to write this down so that I remember how to say it. I'm not even going to say it right, but we're going to be doing Sardar Udham, which is a recommendation from some people who commented on our YouTube videos for the movie we did a few years ago called Three Idiots, which is an Indian film, Bollywood film. And I think this is about India. It's a fight for independence and freedom. We watched the trailer for it in the pre-show bonus content tonight, and it actually looks like it's going to be a spicy meatball for us to discuss. And what I might do is try to see if Jared Wall can come on, because he was our guest for Three Idiots, and we had a good time talking about that movie with him. So maybe he'd be willing to come on for this one, Sardar Udham, for next week.
sounds good to me. Yeah. It looked like a well-made movie, if nothing else. And it looks like it's got plenty of content taking place in India during the English occupation.
Yeah, we will not have any shortage of things to talk about. And hopefully you've got a little bit more to talk about, James, as we do a little bit of Kathleen Turner Overdrive right after this. And with that, we'll say peace out, everyone. Good night from last night. All right, and continuing the transmission for just a hair longer on the actual Anarchy podcast. Robert, we got a bit of feedback from people on your hating of John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness from last week. A couple
Everybody
of people
agreeing with me?
and said sacrilege.
Everyone's agreeing with me?
They
Good.
also said that vampires is also underappreciated and quite good. And so we've had a few
Oh, well,
offers
then
for
we
people.
know what kind of people were commenting. If they were saying that vampires was underrated and good, then we can safely dismiss all of their opinions.
Well, actually, I said, well, let's do vampires at some point. So you're going to have to suffer through it, I think.
Good Lord.
I've
I'm
never
not
Is
heard
there
of this
no
movie.
end to the torture that you bring to me?
No, there's no end to the torture. And also another comment we got, and by the way, keep the comments coming. We actually enjoy these. Somebody took issue with my instruction or advice on how to eat candy corn, which is you take the candy corn, you open the package, you dump the candy corn into the garbage, and you eat a Reese's.
Yeah.
Somebody
That's
took
the
issue
proper
with that.
way. I don't
Said that
understand.
they really like candy corn, and I said, well,
No, that's the directions on the bag. You're not even adding anything. That's what it says to do.
yeah, I think so. Yeah. James, your take on John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness and or vampires and on candy corn. 30 seconds.
Homie,
go.
I have never seen Prince of Darkness. I'm reading the Wikipedia on vampires. I think I've seen this a whole bunch of times when I was a teenager. And I think I remember liking it, but don't, it's because I was a teenager, probably. Candy corn's awful, and Twizzlers, but not the regular Twizzlers, not the ones that you get at the movie theater. You have to get cherry Twizzlers, or black Twizzlers if you like licorice flavored stuff. Those are the very best candy. The cherry Twizzlers come in the little bite-sized ones, and also the pull and peel. But if you
cherry
can
nibs.
Yeah, but if you can find like
cherry
the
nibs are
actual,
fantastic.
they're delicious. But if you can find the actual full-length Twizzlers, not the kind that you peel apart, in cherry flavor, get them. They're really good and they're kind of rare. They're hard to find. Coming from a candy connoisseur, obviously. Yeah, but no, candy corn is not good for much. I did see a recipe today where candy corn was blended in with sausage and put into the little sausage, the sausage thing. You know what I'm talking about, the sausage thing? The skins,
what are you
the little
talking
sausage condoms. Yeah, they ground up candy corns with the meat and stuffed it into sausage casings. Apparently it's pretty good. You can't really taste the candy corn. It lends a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of that, candle wax texture, I guess, which is always welcome in sausage.
Yummy, yummy candle wax.
Yeah, I told you this would become a horror episode, Robert.
You're right. You were right.
Yeah. Oh, and last week I forgot to do this, but I wanted to do the Fauci to Rand Paul when you were saying that you didn't like Prince of Darkness and say, frankly, sir, you do not know what you are talking about.
I haven't seen Prince of Darkness. I need to see that.
No, you don't.
Sure I do. Why not?
No, you don't.
Or
Do
just listen to
you-
our episode?
Okay, go ahead. Do it, and then you let me know if it was worth your time.
Okay, I will. I mean, John Carpenter, like, he's recognized as kind of a genius, right? Like,
He's hit
Or
or
am I
miss,
wrong?
but yeah, he's certainly got a vibe to him.
no,
There
he's
are
not who I'm
fans,
thinking
there are
about.
completionists who
Who did-
He's made some
enjoy-
fantastic films. He's made They Live. He's made The Thing,
Big Trouble Little China.
Big Trouble Little China, Halloween 2. And I don't even know if those are even that great, but
Who's the Hellraiser guy?
Clive
I
Barker.
don't know that.
That's who I'm thinking about.
Oh,
He's the one
Clive
who's
Barker.
like an artist, not just a filmmaker or whatever. Oh man.
Well, Carpenter's
Prince
the
of
guy that
Darkness.
also makes the music. So he's
Oh.
like, they call him a triple threat.
Okay, maybe that is who I'm thinking of then. Like, I feel like did Prof CJ do like a whole series of Dangerous History all about John Carpenter?
Probably.
He may have. He can.
He was our guest for that
influence.
movie.
Yeah.
Oh, was it?
He was-
Okay, yeah, that's
Yeah.
got to be it then. Like, was he able to wax eloquent and like know everything about it and stuff?
Oh, he even liked that movie.
Yeah. Okay, that's who I'm thinking of then. I haven't seen enough of his movies to be able to speak intelligently about it.
Yeah. Prof. CJ was great. He saved.
Isn't he great?
He saved that. Yeah.
He was at Tom Woods 2000, and it was so good to get to meet him in person. He's such a nice guy. I love that dude.
He is a great guy.
No homo.
Anybody that likes that movie
We're
likes
being
Ugly
charitable.
Ducklings. He's just nice to everybody. He's nice to everything.
That's right. Okay, well, let's wind this down here and we'll get into some Kathleen Turner Overdrive. So, James, thanks again for being our guest for Deo. It's Beetlejuice. And people can find your stuff at blackbirdpodcast.com, libertycreator.co. And we'll see everyone next week for Sardar Udham. And I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's ticking across the bottom of the screen, Sardar Udham. And we'll see you guys all next week. And we'll say maximum freedom. Peace out.
Roar.
Yeah.
The Chipmunks. CHIPMUNK. We're the Chipmunks. Guaranteed to brighten your day. Do 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 do.